Hello, fellow Movie Crusaders, and welcome to the very first episode of the Weekend Crusaders. My name is Sean Wasserkrug, and right to my other side here, I'm not going to say right or left because I feel like I'll mess it up, is Brian Michaels. Sorry if I sound a little off today. I have literally been sick as a dog for the past week, and my voice is not quite up to par. So I apologize if you guys cannot hear me very well. Next week, I hope it'll be better. But it is the first episode of the Weekend Crusaders. Brian and I have been planning this show for over a month now. Just an idea that Brian and I had. We wanted to do a show together that basically not just talked about the brand new movies coming out, but just talked about movies in general. And we decided to make strict rules on what movies to talk about, and that's what the Weekend Crusaders is. So we're going to kind of go over what the show's about really first. We were going to do a separate video for that, but you know what? We just got busy with other things, and plus me being sick, it just made it hard to do. But basically, each episode is going to be about the specific weekend coming up. So in this case, January 8th, 9th, and 10th is this Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So basically what Brian and I are doing is we have picked 5 films that have been released in that time on those 3 days throughout movie history. And then we chose to talk about a featured film out of that group, where we're going to spend a little more time talking about a movie that we feel like should be more appreciated. A revisited film, a movie that's a little bit, when we say older, we don't mean like it's an old film, but it's a film that maybe people have not remembered or really should bring back up to.
Or sometimes it's one that we're like, I think I like that movie. Let's go look back at it.
Exactly. So a revisited film, and then Brian and I both have our own personal pick of a movie that came out in those 3 days that we would like people to watch. Some of them might be regular films that people have seen tons of times before. Some might be hidden little gems from one of ours that are personal favorites of ours. They might not be good movies to you guys, but they're good movies to us. And then just so that way it's not just a total love fest, we picked a stinker of the weekend, which is a movie that we both just do not like. And to further stir the pot, we both made ourselves sit down and watch it together, a la Mystery Science 3000. So that way we didn't have to waste each other's time watching it.
It's more bearable that way. It's fun.
Exactly. And the reason why we're starting it this week, this upcoming weekend, and not last weekend, which was the first, second, and third, is we looked at the movies that came out on the first, second, and third in movie history, and that list was pretty bad. Just to name a few, we had like The Woman in Black 2, Calendar Girls, Wisdom, The Grudge from last year, Paranormal Activity, the Marked Ones, About Schmidt, Ghosts of Mississippi, Head Office. We were like, yeah, we don't want to have our first show be about.
And we were even looking at, because we're going by wide release here. So like you'll see like movies that were released Christmas time for Oscar consideration, very limited runs. If they went wide in January, we can count those in January. But we couldn't even find one of those for this week.
Oh no, it was so bad, and especially at least 2. I believe at least 2 of our films, you could say those were released in December. Yes, they were limited releases, but their official wide release was in the weekend of January 8th, 9th, and 10th. So that's where we're going to be doing it. And then next week's episode, we're going to be looking at movies that came out on the 15th, 16th, and 17th, and so on and so forth. So every week, there's going to be numerous of films that we could talk about. And for years to come, we obviously have an unlimited amount of films, except for that first weekend of the year, where the options are endless for us. So we hope you guys follow us all the way through. This is episode 1. And I hope you guys enjoy it. This is something that we've been really excited to do. And this first episode, we were real excited to touch base on some of these films. One of them in particular, I had never seen. And the other ones, there were 2 of them where I remember seeing them, but I don't remember anything about them. So I'm having to go back and rewatch them and kind of get a new feeling on them. Definitely helped out a lot. Brian, anything else before we jump in?
No, I mean, I know you said that this is a show we've been wanting to do. Really good credit goes to Sean, because this was his idea. I've been wanting to a show. I just like to talk about movies, but this whole concept of how we could like select movies, and it's not just, oh, well, there's a sequel coming out this week, so let's talk about the original, because everybody does that kind of thing. So this is kind of a way to just like pick a weekend, look at what's available, make some picks from that, and talk about it. So I'm just happy for a chance to talk about movies and hopefully make you guys take a second look at some of them.
Yeah, and nothing is more disappointing to us when we have a really good movie in our mind and it doesn't fall on the weekend. We're like, no,
I missed by a day. We have to wait till like next year.
Yeah, no. Especially if it's like one day off. It's the worst. But like I said, we got plenty of movies to talk about. So let's go ahead and get started. The order of how we're going to do this will change week to week based off the movies, but we're actually going to go ahead and go into our featured film of the week. And this is one that Brian and I both actually really enjoyed, but we didn't realize it until we started to go over the movies. And that movie, it came out on January 8th, 2010. Opening weekend number was 15.1 million. It finished fourth behind Avatar in its fourth week. Yeah. Sherlock Holmes in its third week, and Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Squeakquel in its third week. That makes me sad. It finished its box office at 30.1 mil in the US and 51.4 mil worldwide. And it is the vampire film Daybreakers. Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about Daybreakers?
Daybreakers is essentially it's a future world, which has 2019. So, this is 10 years old. Give me a break. But it's basically a world in which vampires have basically taken over the world. At some point, this vampire plague started, and they're getting to the point now where there's almost no humans left. So the world is kind of controlled by vampires, but then the few humans that are left are kind of in hiding. The problem is the vampires then are running out of food sources. Ethan Hawke plays, he's a vampire. He's a scientist who's basically trying to come up with a blood substitute. And there are people but he's also one of these people who's kind of a reluctant vampire. He doesn't hate the humans. He doesn't want to harm the humans. He kind of feels sorry for them. So he's kind of your sympathetic hero of the movie. I don't want to give too much of the movie away. You have a band of humans involves Willem Dafoe is one of them. He plays a character called Elvis. He gives a classic Willem Dafoe performance like he always does. But basically, Ethan Hawke's character kind of gets involved with this group of humans, and I don't know how much I want to give away, but something you should definitely check out. But
it's one of things where it's like, is there going to be times? Especially with a movie that's like 10 years old, where we spoil stuff, sure. But these are movies that maybe if you guys hadn't seen, we want you to check out and see. So we're going to try our best to tiptoe around certain things, but there's going to be times where we're just not going to be able to. But yeah, to go off of what Brian said, so basically a vampire plague. Everyone's vampires now. There's some people who have been kind of not turned. And like Brian said, they're running out of food. They're running out of blood. And what the big thing about the film that's unique about it is when the vampires, when they run out of blood or they start feeding on themselves, it's poison to them. And it actually starts turning them into basically life-size bats.
More of a creature, yeah.
Like a creature bat, like the wings and everything like that. So it's more or less trying to preserve their world on top of trying to also save the humans, because they want to save them so that way they're not, because if they run out of the humans, then their world's done too. So they got to find a counterbalance, which is where Ethan Hawke's character comes into play, because he's trying to find a blood substitute so that way they can save off the humans and allow them to reproduce while still keeping the vampires alive. And the world that they created in this film is fantastic. There's so many things and ideas in this film that you see. They're just small little things.
I thought the best thing about the movie was the world they built.
Oh, it's a beautiful.
They're going to the little coffee stands, and they put little how much blood you want in your coffee, like that.
Blood coffee, and like all the vampires' eyes have like a weird like yellowish glow tint. So when the lights are out, their eyes light up. You got like underground subways that people can walk through because of daylight. They have daytime protector visors on their cars so they can drive.
Oh yeah, the cars drive around, and basically the shields that go down to entirely black, and they have basically TV monitors and cameras so they can drive during the daytime.
It's brilliant.
Great world they
built. The things they thought of, and like even the opening scene, I'll spoil it. Opening scene, because it's not a big deal. It's opening moment. Literally, the movie opens up with a girl, like a little girl, committing suicide via sunlight because she can't live with the thought of not growing up, which starts off right there, just tells you the world that these people are in. And there are people who love the whole vampire aspect of it, and then there are people like Ethan Hawke who was forced into that world and wants to find a way to make it better. And it's a incredibly well told story. There's a fantastic story in there. The movie just doesn't get enough time to really delve into it. And I remember the first time I saw it, and I think, Brian, you kind of agreed with me, this would have been a fantastic TV series. If they had done something like
I think this would make a fantastic TV series now.
Yeah, because
they had made it back then, it would have been like cheesy syndicated TV kind of thing. But where TV is now, where it's basically movie level production values, absolutely.
I mean, you would have had like True Blood was running at the same time, and True Blood's over the max, and this one's more of a, I don't want to say down to earth, but it is. like a down to earth vampire like apocalypse drama. And I think, yes, by today's standards, this would be a fantastic HBO Max, Netflix series with this world. I would love to be more into this world. And I think, honestly, if the movie had just done better in terms of like its performance and stuff, we probably would have gotten sequels to this, maybe. It probably wouldn't have had Ethan Hawke and all them back in it again, but we probably would have stayed in this world a little bit longer, kind of like the Underworld franchise. But it's one of those movies that, like, if you guys have never seen it or heard of it, like I said, William Dafoe, Sam Neill is great in it. He's kind of playing the boss of the organization that Ethan Hawke works under.
He's kind of the villain of the movie too. Yeah,
he's basically the vampire business villain guy. Ethan Hawke as always. If you guys like Ethan Hawke, then you'll like him in this. William Dafoe's William Dafoe. I mean, we all love Willem Dafoe. Who doesn't? But it's really more the world that is created around them that really sells Daybreakers.
It really is, because I think the world they created is what I love most about it. And I said in my review recently that I'd forgotten how much I love this movie, and it may very well be my favorite vampire film, or it's at least in the top 5. Because it's because of the world they built. I thought they had some clever ideas, which I haven't really seen some of these things before or since then. I thought the direction was great. The directors, surprisingly, they were doing this coming off just a small, I think, Australian movie called Undead. Mm-hmm. And the problem is, since then, probably because it didn't do all that great, they haven't done much since then. I mean, they put him on some, major studio stuff like horror movie called Winchester. They did Jigsaw, the Saw movie Jigsaw. All these things that were fine, but none of them quite lived up to what they did here. But I'm actually surprised to hear it made $30 million. I thought it would have made less than $30 million, honestly, because I don't hear anybody talk about this movie.
And it's sad too, because it's one of those movies that I've always thought very highly of, but I never talk about it because I feel like no one paid attention to this movie when it came out. And then Brian felt the same way, so we both kind of were just like, Daybreakers. We both were like, yes.
Let's make that our featured one, because people need to see this movie.
Like, literally, we were going through the list, we're like, oh, Daybreak, and you're like, yeah. And I'm like, oh, that's our feature. It's like we both said Daybreakers, really excited. That's our feature film. But yes, if you guys have not checked out Daybreakers, go ahead and do that. I don't think it's on any streaming services right now, though.
I can check that for you right this second. Well, it's available to like rent and everything everywhere. Actually, it's on Peacock. So even the version of Peacock, although it'll have ads.
You know what? I totally did watch it on Peacock too. I don't know why I forgot that. and the weird thing too is like the ads are only in the first hour of the film, and they're like 30-second ads, and then like the whole last hour is ad free, which I thought was actually really cool by them for not doing that. But yeah, it's on Peacock. Peacock is free. I know a lot of people are saying pay for it. You don't have to. It's free.
Oh, right now you can buy it on Vudu for $6.99.
You can with no ads. I do it with ads because I just don't want to pay for it. But yes, check out Daybreakers if you guys haven't. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you guys like that movie, don't like that movie, let us know. Like I said, you guys don't have to like these movies. These are the movies that we picked. If you guys, want other movies, feel free to do your own Weekend Crusader show. Just don't call it Weekend Crusaders. So next, we are going to go to Brian's pick.
Oh, you're going to mine first.
Yeah, we are going to yours first.
All right.
So this one is of the list of films that we looked at. This was the film that Brian felt needed to be talked about so badly. That's why I'm teeing you up for it. So go right ahead, Brian, with your pick.
You're just teeing me up for abuse. This is the most Brian pick that there could be. Is the 1992 classic action comedy known as Cuffs. First, why don't you go ahead and give us the stats on Cuffs?
So Cuffs, opening weekend, surprisingly did 5.63 mil or 6.5 mil, which in 1992 is actually pretty good. It finished 5th behind The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, Hook, The Prince of Tides, and Father of the Bride. And it finished with a box office of 21.1 million. It was only released in the U.S. It did not have a worldwide release, so it only finished with 21.1 mil. But yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it didn't do great, but I mean, this is back in the 90s. Sure. These little comedies could come out and make $20 million, and they were considered modest hits. This is, if you haven't heard of Cuffs, basically Christian Slater is Christian Slater. He's playing himself like he does in many movies. His older brother runs this patrol department. Basically, San Francisco at some point had been broken up into, they have these private securities that cover districts in place of the police or in addition to the police. His brother gets murdered, who's one of these cops, and he basically inherits his district. But of course, he's this 20-something-year-old kid. He's irresponsible. He doesn't want anything to do with this. Nobody wants him to have it as their boss stuff. But he decides he wants to solve the murder of his brother. That's basically the only plot you need to know. But it's basically, both Sean and I, strangely enough, had the exact same review of this movie. Him not reading mine, is that it's basically Ferris Bueller meets Beverly Hills Cop. The Beverly Hills Cop, partially because of the action comedy, but also the score is also done by Harold Faltermeyer, which really helps give it that same kind of feel to it. And Ferris Bueller in that, he frequently breaks the third wall. He talks to the camera. And so, those are actually some of the funniest moments of the movie, I think. But it's got him in it. It's got Bruce Boxleitner from things like Tron as his older brother. A very young Mila Jovovich, maybe her first movie, I think, is in it as his girlfriend. Tony Goldwyn is basically his partner, who's like somebody who's on that police force, and of course they don't get along and hijinks ensue.
I think the only movie I know that guy from is he's the dick in Ghosts.
He's in Ghosts. He's not known for a whole lot. He's done some things.
He's the guy.
I believe he's the voice of Tarzan in the animated Tarzan.
Oh, really?
And he's done other movies. He's actually the grandson or great grandson of the Goldwyn from Metro Goldwyn Mayer's MGM. So, but yeah, that's basically the plot of the movie. What were your thoughts on it, Sean?
I mean, that was kind of the funny thing is like I said, when I messaged you, I was like, all right, so I watched Cuffs. You're like, well, I can already tell you didn't like it.
When you say, well, I watched Cuffs, that's never starts out good.
It was one of those where it's like, I swear I remember seeing this movie when it came out in 92, but I don't remember the movie itself. So when I watched it, yeah, that was the funny thing is I basically told Brian, I was like, it's basically Ferris Bueller meets Beverly Hills Cop. And then when I checked out his review, it said that. I was like, we did not plan that. Here's my problem with Cuffs. It's not bad. It's definitely in its own time. 92, it's right in that kind of film. It's not even the whole fourth wall breaking, which that can get a little tedious, but it's fine because they establish it so early in the film that you're like, all right, that's just, he can do this, that's fine. It's they try to throw comic hijink sound effects into the movie at one point, like the like you don't have to throw Three Stooges sound effects in this. Like the movie's fine on its own, and it's just so out of nowhere. It's like 40 plus minutes of the film. It just decides to do this, and it's like, what the hell just happened to this movie? Like the movie's very bare bones as it is. I mean, it's a kid who's 21 who literally has no idea what he's doing, but he wants revenge on the guy who killed his brother, and he learns to become a cop along the way. I mean, we've seen this in other films. As well, but they were newer than this one, so maybe they kind of took a blueprint from this and just ran with it. But it wasn't bad, but it's of its age. Like would this film came out like this year, it would have been ripped apart. But
I don't even know if it came out now if I would love it as much. I mean, I saw this in 1992, and I was the perfect age for it when it came out. And I really think that your enjoyment of this film is going to hinge 100% on how much you like or dislike Christian Slater, because it is the Christian Slateriest movie that he's ever made.
And I like Christian Slater, I do. So that definitely helps. Because honestly, the rest of the cast doesn't really do a whole lot to help Christian Slater in the movie. It's basically 100% a Christian Slater film. Everyone else is just kind of there for little small parts. He really doesn't have a good, solid supporting character, because even his partner, he's literally kind of just has like 2 scenes in the movie. He's like, there's that one night that they're together, and then he comes in at the very end, and that's it. And it's just like, if he was in it more, they could have established and grounded the characters a little bit better, but he just kind of disappears. And then you're like, what the hell happened to his partner? And then like 30 minutes later, he comes back in for the end. But otherwise, like, I can tell why Brian likes this movie, because I know Brian's taste, and so like this is totally up Brian's alley.
I don't like this movie. I love this movie.
You love this movie.
I watch it and I just smile through the whole movie.
And you know what? There are movies that I have that are considered horrible by most people's standards that just make me smile and make me laugh. So I get it.
And I will say this, in terms of the whole fourth wall breaking, I think that there are people that can pull it off and people that can't. Like obviously Matthew Broderick and Ferris Bueller, he was very good at it. And there's other movies where they try it and it doesn't quite work. I think Christian Slater did a great job of that aspect of it here.
Oh no,
I think he can handle that sarcastic, talking to the camera.
No, he works it well. It's just there are certain times where it was like, you shouldn't have done it there. Same thing when I said in my review of Enola Holmes earlier this year. It's like her fourth wall breaking works fine, but there are just moments when she shouldn't have done it. Because like if she's looking at us in a scene where really she shouldn't be looking at us, it kind of takes you out of the scene itself, if you get what I mean. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it was just to me, my whole thing was that they just started throwing a lot of comedy sound effects, and like they make his partner act like a. Granted, there's a reason for it, but there's this one horribly acted scene by his partner, and like they basically go make a funny face right now. And I'm just like,
it's just a little over the top comical. It's almost cartoonish, and for me it worked. For Sean, it didn't. I think everybody should check it out though.
I just think it didn't have to be. I think the movie would actually have served better if it didn't try to go over the top with the comedy. Just let the comedy be more natural, because you got Christian Slater. The comedy's going to come. But yeah, that was Brian Pick's Cuffs. Now my pick, Brian doesn't like. So you literally were watching it going, I'm bored and uninterested.
I will admit that, yes.
So this movie, the director himself is hot and cold with me. I love the director in a lot of things, but I dislike him in so many other things. And this movie, once again, like Brian said, with Cuffs, he just watches it and it makes him smile. This film is one of those movies with me. I just love the story that's being told and the performances of the lead character, and it just makes me smile. And that is Tim Burton's Big Fish. Now, Big Fish came out on January 9th, 2004. It was actually one of the last films that I got to see while working at the movie theaters, because I left there just before summer 2004. Weekend opening did $13.8 million. It had done $8.45 million in limited, so it had been out for a few weeks before their wide release, and it was finished second on the weekend behind, of course, Lord of the Rings: Return of the King. I mean, let's face it, nothing was going to beat that. But it finished its box office domestically at $66.8 million and finished worldwide at $123.2 million, which I believe is the biggest earner of our movies picked in this week's episode. I love Ewan McGregor in this movie. He's cheesy in it as like the lovable, like kind of like Clark Kent-ish kind of character, up to a 10. But I love the world and the story. Basically, the whole plot of Big Fish is you have this guy, Edward Bloom, and he's all about his stories. And he's dying of cancer, and his son, played by Billy, is it Crudup?
Crudup.
Yeah. He's never believed his stories. He thinks his dad's full of it. So he kind of has this like wedge in his relationship with his dad, because he feels like he doesn't ever actually know his dad. The best way he describes it was like his dad's an iceberg. You see an iceberg and you're really only seeing 10% of the iceberg, and then everything's underwater. And he feels like he doesn't know his dad because he feels like all these stories are full of crap. But he's basically trying to find out who his real father is between the tall tales and stories of his father's life. And we're kind of learning these stories as the movie goes on about how he was when he was a child, how he was as a teenager when he met the love of his life, Sandra Bloom, played by Alison Lohman as young Sandra, and then Jessica Lange as older Sandra. Both do a fantastic job. But that story right there, how he first saw her and what he did to try and get her to fall in love with him, I think is beautiful throughout this film. You also got fantastic moments with Danny DeVito. What's that one guy that's in all Tim Burton's movies? He played the Oompa Loompas. Got a weird name.
Oh, I forgot his name.
Oh, what's his name? He played all the Oompa Loompas. He's got a super weird name. Deep Roy.
That's it.
Yeah. Helena Bonham Carter, because it's a Tim Burton movie. Albert Finney plays older Edward Bloom. Marion, I always say her last name.
Marion Cotillard.
Yes, who I love, plays his son.
Oh, I forgot she was in this. This must have been like before she kind of hit it big in the U.S.
Oh yeah. She plays Billy Cudriff's wife. It's just a beautiful story about a son who never believed his father. Now, are all the stories that Edward tells is true? No, not at all. Some of them are spun, but you know what? That's the way the world is. People are all about their stories. Some are woven completely false or over exaggerated in certain effects, as we see here in the film, and some are based on fact. And it's trying to find out those stories, but it's also about being okay with not having to know the absolute truth, because sometimes the truth is rather boring. And sometimes telling a tall tale about a story just to make it more exciting and make it more memorable isn't the worst thing in the world. And it's basically telling you that if you can live a life that, at least in the way you're telling it, is something that can be memorable, then you can live on past your personal life and you can live on a legacy. And that's what Big Fish really does really well. And I think, like I said, Ewan McGregor does a fantastic job of telling the story, as well with Albert Finney and the rest of the cast. And it's one of my favorite Tim Burton films overall. Now, I said Brian was bored with this film. He was disinterested.
Well, let's see, now I did not dislike this movie. Now, I saw the movie when it first came out, and I'm not sure I saw it again until I rewatched it this past week. And again, I didn't dislike it. It wasn't anything that jumped out at me that I wanted to see. And so when I was rewatching it, I kind of remembered how I was a little bit bored and disinterested in it. But the acting performances were good, things like that. Just that the story didn't grab me for whatever reason personally. I think that part of it being, when I see a Tim Burton movie, expect kind of a certain kind of movie. This is one of the least Tim Burton movies. I think this is one of the first one where he tried to kind of make almost a normal movie. Now, it still has some definite Tim Burton stylistic choices in it, but before then he'd be doing Batman and Beetlejuice and Edward Scissorhands and these kind of things. And then he did this, and then I think he didn't really make another serious film like this until he did Big Eyes a couple of years ago. And I had kind of the same thing with that, in that the story was good, but when I'm seeing a Tim Burton film, I'm kind of expecting something different. So I don't know if maybe just knowing it's expecting one thing from Tim Burton and not getting it, maybe that affected it. But again, I don't dislike the movie. It just isn't something I consider one of my favorites.
That's probably why I liked the movie as much as I did, is because it was the less Tim Burton-y of his films. I mean, when I look at Tim Burton movies, I mean, this, Sweeney Todd, Batman Returns, those are my favorite Tim Burton films. It's not, no one's is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Everyone hates that. It's horrible. But it's not Edward Scissorhands. It's not 90 of the other Johnny Depp Tim Burton films. It's one of the, like I say, it's a feel-good movie, and this movie makes me smile. And Steve
and I agree. I think Ewan McGregor did a great job. Although anytime he does an American accent, he kind of, I think, overdoes it a little bit. But I thought he did a great job. I thought it was really good casting. It's him as young Albert Finney. I thought was very believable. The relationship when they have Albert Finney dealing with Billy Crudup, I thought that was a very good relationship. I enjoyed the scenes they had together.
And Loma and Lang, I thought were fantastic as Sandra.
Yeah.
I really like them both in it. Cudrup is a kind of a character you want to punch. You just be happy with your dad's stories. But he's like, no.
Well, I kind of get it though, because I mean, he's kind of being a jerk to his dad, but you got to realize he's dealt with a lifetime of, he can't get a real straight answer from his dad. He gets these tall tales instead of just talking about himself for real,
I mean, his character the son is basically playing the character of what's his name from when he was a child. He's he lives in the shadow of his dad's stories, just like the one guy who was living in the town with Edward Bloom. He's lived behind Edward's shadow his whole life, so he just grew up to hate him, despise him, because he was always the focal point. And for this kid, that's or with Billy Cudrup's character, that's always a big problem, is that nothing's ever about him. It's always about his dad and his stories. Like in the very beginning, during his wedding, he told a story about him, which he was turning it around to his son. But it was one of those things where it was everything's got to be about you. And it's not like he's egotistical or anything. He's just a really good storyteller. He's got tons of stories. But the son just is over these stories. He's heard them 1,000 times. And it's something that needs to be fixed by the end of the film. And I think the ending of the film is also done beautifully.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, and so if you guys have never seen Big Fish, you can rent it on Prime for $3. But it is a beautiful film. It looks gorgeous. It really does.
You can watch it for free right now on IMDb TV.
With ads, yes, you can do that. But yeah, that is my personal favorite. Now we're gonna go to the stinker film, which I know this is probably gonna piss off people, because I know a lot of people who love this franchise. Brian and I are not those people. This is the first film in the franchise, and it also came out the same weekend as the last film we're going to talk about. So they both came out at the same time. And that is...
Oh, I wish I'd brought a flashlight.
Yes.
Leprechaun.
I love that the one thing that we could both enjoy about this movie was from Wayne's World, which is nothing about this movie. There was literally, when we were watching this together, we both just at the same time went, "I'm the Leprechaun." But yeah, we're talking about Leprechaun. Came out January 8th, 1993. Weekend opening, 2.49 million. It finished 8th on the week. I'm going to refrain from who else finished because the next movie will probably explain all that as well. It finished at 8.54 million. It was really only in theaters for 2 weeks, and it spawned, what, 6 sequels, 7 sequels?
Yeah, we looked at it and found that this movie cost under $1 million to make, apparently, and so it made 8 times its budget. So, of course, that means we had to sit through however many more. Although, honestly, I'm not even sure if I've seen any of the sequels.
I've never seen any of them.
Yeah.
I know, and this is one of those things, like, I remember seeing this one. I didn't remember anything about it, but I remember seeing the first Leprechaun, and I had never seen any of the others. The 2 big names in this, I guess you want to go 3 big names, is Warwick Davis plays the Leprechaun, which I felt so bad for him for doing this. And then, of course, the big name is, this was like Jennifer Aniston's like first film, where she's basically playing Rachel Green. Like, it's very easy to see how she got the role on Friends, because she's basically playing Rachel. And then, because, Brian wanted to, pointed this guy out, the character of Ozzy is played by Mark Holton from Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which I hate that movie so much. This movie's
he was also in Teen Wolf. He was in A League of Their Own, I think.
You're right. He was Michael J. Fox's like buddy, wasn't he? In Teen Wolf? Yeah. Now
he was I think he was like the bully there too, wasn't he?
Was he the bully?
He was so long. No, because his friend was Styles, and that was a different guy.
Yeah, no, he was the bully. Yeah, this movie sucks. It sucked. First off, the opening, and kind of like when we talk about our best and worst of the year, if it's the stinker, we really don't care about spoiling it. We really don't, because these movies are bad and they don't deserve to be watched. There's no build up in the beginning of this movie. Like, it starts like, and literally the movie starts like it's the end of the first film. It really feels that way. Like, there's just no explanations to the Leprechaun besides, we took your pot. This guy took his pot of gold and he just wants to get him back. And then all of a sudden, he gets beaten because a guy pulled out a 4-leaf clover like it's a fucking cross to a vampire. He's
like, stay back.
Oh no! It's so stupid. And then apparently you can also distract him by throwing shoes at him because he has to clean the shoes. And Brian's part that Brian loved so bad that caused me to just lose my shit was like in the middle of the movie, the Ozzy character sees the Leprechaun for the first time and no one believes him. And this fucking rainbow.
Oh God! Yeah, the one time they show a rainbow because you want to follow the rainbow to the pot of gold, and this rainbow with like these, somebody homemade on their computer in 1993. It's like the rainbow just suddenly forms in the sky, but it's like it's only got 3 colors. It's only red, blue, and green, and it just looks like something somebody just like hand drew on there or something. But
Brian goes, "What? They couldn't afford the rest of the colors."
They couldn't afford the rest of the colors. Yeah. Well, it wasn't included on their 1992 version of MS Paint or whatever they were using to make it.
Oh my God. It was just so randomly stupid because, like, he's like, trust me, it happened. And then literally in the corner, rainbow. It's just so bad. The acting is horrible. I'm dying right now. The acting's horrible. The kill count, honestly, is like really, really low in the movie. And there's so many times where this movie was just like, why don't they just do this? Like, why don't they just do this?
Yeah.
It's just like, because it's a fucking Leprechaun. That's why. It's not a good movie. It honestly doesn't deserve to be talked about as much as we're talking about it right now.
I'm gonna say I didn't absolutely hate the movie though.
Of course.
Well, no. I didn't think it's by no means a good movie. But it's the kind of movie that if I had watched it alone, I would have just been mostly bored and rolling my eyes the whole time. But it's the kind of movie that because I watched it with you, or if you watch with some friends, especially make some kind of drinking game out of it, I actually enjoyed watching it just because of how bad it was. Now Warwick Davis, I don't feel bad for him because this is one of the few movies he actually got to be the lead in, the star in, and he went on to star in however many more of them. I mean,
Dude,
besides this, Willow was basically it. Yeah,
Willow.
there's
And
that.
look at
And
this.
Jennifer Aniston. I mean, this movie's worth watching just to watch Jennifer Aniston because she is so darn cute in this movie. So I could just watch this movie.
These were like a year before Friends.
I think Well, it came out a year before Friends, so it probably got filmed like 2 years before. But yeah,
Probably.
so
she definitely looks younger in this than she was when she debuted on Friends.
yeah. But I mean, is the story full of plot holes, which we had a great time just pointing out every single one of us as we watched it? Yes. So as a film, bad. As a film watching experience, actually kind of had fun.
If we could have filmed us just watching it because we know we can't show the whole movie and watch us watch it. But if we could, we so would have done it, and you guys would have loved it because we were having so much fun just ripping this movie while watching it. But we don't want to do a watch along and just have you guys watch us as we're watching something off screen. That's just stupid, and I don't think it's very fun for you guys. So we're not going to do that. But if we could have shown the movie and not gotten in trouble for it, we definitely would have, because that would have been a lot funnier. We did find, like, literally right after we saw Leprechaun, we were like, should we have done a different stinker? And then we found the movie we should have done, which we're going to hold off till next year. Because that movie probably deserved to be talked about more than Leprechaun did. But
yeah, but no, this one, in terms of the box office thing, like I said, it spawned however many sequels, and then a reboot in 2014, which had another 2 movies on it. But I guess only the first 2 of these went to theaters. But I mean, apparently people went and saw it. It's the kind of thing now which should go straight to VOD if they ever made this movie. But
I mean, the last one was 2018, and it went straight to VOD.
Yeah, but so if you're with some friends looking for something stupid to just sit and make fun of, worth checking out.
Yeah. So going to our last film, this is our revisited film. So this is a film that, when looking back at everything that came out on these 3 days, it stood out to me going, you know what? I've always wanted to see this film. I never have. And I know who's the star, and I think we should really check this movie out. Brian had seen it already, and he said, yeah, he goes, I remember it being good. And I was like, all right, then let's do it. And the reason why we chose this one in particular, and we get it for most of probably the movie community that watch this, stuff like that, you guys all know that this lead actor was doing stuff way before 2008. But for a lot of people, they probably don't realize that this lead actor was actually a really good actor before he became Iron Man in 2008. And that is Robert Downey Jr. And the movie that we are talking about as our final film of the episode came out January 8th, 1993, same date as Leprechaun. I know, two widely different movies. This was the Oscar-nominated film Chaplin, where I almost said Rodney Dangerfield, where Robert Downey Jr. plays Charlie Chaplin. Opening weekend. Now it did have a limited release because it was an Oscar-nominated film. But opening weekend, it did $3.2 million. It had about 272,000 in limited prior to the opening weekend, and it finished 7th on the weekend. Leprechaun was 8th, and these were the films that were ahead of both of them. A Few Good Men, Aladdin, Scent of a Woman, The Bodyguard, Forever Young, and Home Alone 2: Lost in New York. And of course, yeah, it's quite a list. And then Chaplin, and then Leprechaun was right behind Chaplin. Because it's an Oscar film, obviously, these movies don't tend to make a huge amount in the box office. It only finished with $9.49 million. It did not go worldwide. It only stayed in the U.S. But Robert Downey got a Oscar nomination for the role. He lost to, was it Pacino or De Niro for Son of a Woman?
Son of a Woman.
Yeah, was it Pacino or De Niro?
Oh,
Pacino. He lost to Pacino for it. But yeah, I really wanted to see this because, like I said, most people just see Robert Downey Jr. and they see 3 things. They see Iron Man, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and Tropic Thunder. And I was like, you know what? He did do other things prior to the 2000s. And this was one that had always made an effort to try to go and see, but I just never had the time to. And now we did this show, and all of a sudden I had the time to watch it. I think he does a fantastic job as Charlie Chaplin. He really shows his acting strengths in this film. But the big thing that really sold me on this movie as I was watching it is the cast around him is
Yeah.
fantastic. Just to go down the list of the people in this film, like this was by today's standards, probably not a big cast, but by 1993 standards, this cast was huge. I mean, we had Moira Kelly, which is a fan of Brian and I's for The Cutting Edge. Topic. Which I swear to God, if that falls on a weekend for ours, we're probably gonna talk about
Absolutely.
We're probably gonna talk about The Cutting Edge. Anthony Hopkins, Dan Aykroyd, Marissa Tomei, Kevin Kline, also Mila Jovovich, again, Kevin Dunn, Diane Lane, James Woods. Like the cast is fantastic, and a special shout out personally because as fantastic as Robert Downey Jr. was in this film, Kevin Kline is great.
Yeah.
Kevin Kline is such a criminally underrated actor. Now, I know he won Best Supporting Actor for A Fish Called Wanda, and he deserved it because he was fantastic in that. But honestly, what's he done lately? The guy's still got to be a fantastic actor, but like we don't see Kevin Kline around much at all lately.
Well, you see Kevin Kline around when he does pop up. He pops up in more dramatic roles or like small independent movie kind of things. But this is kind of back. This is in the prime of Kevin Kline. This is a couple years after Fish Called Wanda. And he's playing Douglas Fairbanks in this one. You could not have more perfect casting, especially if you've ever seen The Pirates of Penzance, which I don't know how many people in this community have seen it. But yeah, he plays Douglas Fairbanks, perfectly cast for that. And he was able to kind of ham it up in kind of a comedy way, but still play a dramatic role. So
when it gets later into the film and it starts to become more of a dramatic role, he does a fantastic job. Like because to me with Kevin Kline, the first thing I ever saw him in, obviously because of my age, was In and Out, which he's fantastic in that. That's a great comedy. If no one's ever seen that movie with Kevin Kline, he does such a great job in this movie. Moira Kelly and her two small, because she plays two different roles in this film. I thought she was really solid in the film. Dan Aykroyd is great in his small part because it's going through the life of Chaplin. And Anthony Hopkins is kind of playing, I guess, like the narrator of the story with Chaplin because they're discussing his biography. Yeah. And he's trying to go over the footnotes so that way he can finish the biography. And that's basically kind of what the story is. And it tells such a great story. Like I said, Downey does a fantastic job as Chaplin. Kind of, excuse me, goes through his childhood to the start of his stardom to his rise and fall because of people thinking he was a communist. It's an incredibly well done story, and then ends on a very touching, respectful, beautiful note for him at the end. Brian, any more thoughts on Chaplin?
Yeah, I mean, Chaplin, I thought was a kind of great movie when it came out, and now I kind of grew up knowing Robert Downey. Like you saw, some people know him as Iron Man, other people know him in different stages of his life. I kind of grew up with Robert Downey Jr. because I knew him back when he was doing like the '80s comedies, weird science kind of things. This one kind of fell into that area where he wanted to get away from like doing the teen comedies. So he took a serious role like this, which could have really launched his career. But then, of course, in the '90s and early 2000s, he kind of had personal issues and drug issues and things that's kind of derailed his career. And he still showed up in some good movies in the '90s and stuff, but this didn't launch him like the way it should have. But I thought he did a phenomenal job in this movie, playing him, at all different ages, really. The age makeup wasn't great, but it's 1992 or 1993.
Yeah, that's what I said. You're at the age makeup something. I was like, it's 1993.
Now he was never going to win the Oscar because that year was just a murderer's row. It was like I think Unforgiven. I had it here. Malcolm X, Denzel Washington, Crying Game, and then Central Woman.
I mean, it was a great performance, but yeah, he didn't stand a chance.
He was never going to win. But I thought it's one of those things they had a great cast around him because a big part of the movie was all his relationships and his many wives throughout his life. Moira Kelly actually plays two different characters just because they kind of want to remind you of because at the end of his life, it kind of reminded him of the beginning of his life, the relationship he had then. Geraldine Chaplin, Charlie Chaplin's granddaughter, I believe, plays his mother in this movie. So I thought that was kind of a cool tip of the hat there.
It is. That was actually really cool.
But yeah, I mean, it is a little bit long. I will say that. But it's not a bad movie. I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it deserved the nominations it got. And I think everybody, if you haven't seen this movie, I would recommend checking it out.
I don't think it's necessarily too long. I mean, it's 2:23, which by today's standards, for most of these, for the bigger movies, that's kind of right around the norm. I think more or less just when we get to the third act, it stops being funny and it's more dramatic. And
honestly, I think that they could have cut time. I think they could have cut time, and I think I would have enjoyed it more. I don't know if it needed the whole Anthony Hopkins interviewing him. Those segments just seem like unnecessary to me. It's like, just show us the life of Chaplin. But that's just me. They needed a plot device, I suppose. But
I get it, and it does, to me, it does have a little bit of a slow build because it's going through the childhood stuff, and like once Robert Downey actually does come on screen, the movie does not necessarily speed up, but it definitely becomes more livelier and just better because you have to get through him as a kid and as a teenager. So you kind of have to go through like the first 15, 20 minutes without, Downey. But then as soon as Downey shows up, it is pristine. I actually like the Anthony Hopkins scenes because Anthony Hopkins is kind of there trying to break down Chaplin from trying to hide certain things and go, no, I want to know about this. Don't hide this from your viewers. Kind of as like a pulling back the curtain on stuff. Like, don't just show me the pretty stuff. Show me the stuff that you're disappointed in. Show me the stuff that you wish you could have changed. Which I get that's a plot device for the movie. I get it. But I actually like Anthony Hopkins in it. Did they need an Anthony Hopkins type of level of actor for that? No, they didn't. But he did it.
Anthony Hopkins, this was what, technically 92 film.
I mean, this was after.
It was the year after. I think it might have been the first film he did after Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, so I mean, he was big.
Oh, no, wait. In between there was Free Jack, so there's that.
Yeah, Free Jack. We almost talked about Free Jack, and we didn't. Or that's like in the coming weeks, we were almost going to talk about Free Jack. We were like, nah. But yeah, no. I really enjoyed this film overall. Like as I was watching it, I was just like, I am so happy that I picked this for a revisited because I'm glad that I actually got to watch this. And like you, I'm not one of those people who realize that Robert Downey's just Iron Man. There's just a lot of the community today, especially younger kids that are like 21, 2000s. Unless they're watching stuff back, they only know Robert Downey Jr. from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Iron Man, and Up. I obviously was a 90s
those are the
kid.
kind of people I think that'd be best off if they check this movie out, because I think that when you hit kind of that age where you've known him as Iron Man and these other things, but you hit that age where you want to kind of get into more serious films and kind of look back in the history of film, I think this is a great one because not only is it a great film on its own, but it gives you a peek into Charlie Chaplin and try to get into his films. So.
Oh yeah, because I mean, a lot of people just see Chaplin and they go, "Oh, it's that black and white silent star who looked like Hitler," and you realize that no, Chaplin looked like that before Hitler. Like there's actually a little joke in there that Hitler took his appearance to make him look, be more opening to everyone else, but. Whether that's true or not, we don't know, but that's how it is in the movie. But I feel like it opens up the door for people to appreciate Robert Downey Jr. more so than people already, because he's high on everyone right now. But just to show a younger version of him, he was great back then. It's so different than like going back and rewatching Glory and seeing Denzel and all the actors in that, seeing, wow, those guys were fantastic back then. Because a lot of people have heard of Glory, but they probably have never watched Glory, which if you guys haven't, Glory is flipping amazing. But yeah, Chaplin was all revisited. Luckily, it was a good revisit. We highly recommend Chaplin. It is free on Amazon Prime if you guys want to check that out.
It's everywhere. It's Amazon Prime. It's on Hulu. It's on Tubi, Canopy.
It's about 2 hours and 20 minutes, which by today's standards is not that long. But if you want to see a fantastic Robert Downey Jr. performance surrounded by a fantastic supporting cast, especially Kevin Kline, definitely check out Chaplin. And that concludes episode 1 of the Weekend Crusaders. Not a bad first episode. I hope that my voice will be better next time, because it sucks trying to talk and then all of a sudden losing my voice halfway through. But yeah, next week I'm trying to pull up what we have for next week, so I kind of.
Well, if you thought my movie for this week, my pick was one that people are going to question next week. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. So to give a little bit of hints, kind of like Honest Trailers. Let's give you a little bit of a hint on what we're gonna. We've got movies about sports. We got movies about war. We got movies that are very, very early 2000s. And then we got a movie that effectively, in our opinion, killed the career of somebody that we actually were very fond of at the time, and now we can't stand. So go ahead and figure out those clues and come back here next week for episode 2 of the Weekend Crusaders. My name's Sean Wasserkrug. That's Brian Michaels. We hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, leave your comments below. Like, subscribe, the whole jazz. And until next time, in case we don't see you, good morning, good afternoon, and good night, Crusaders.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.